Today, on the whole person mindset, we have Jeremie Kubicek. He's an outlier in the leadership world. He is an entrepreneur, corporate thought leader, as well as audacious encourager to leaders around the world. He is a creative producer of a variety of leadership content with a global program that he works with called Giant Worldwide that he helped create. He's an author. He has written multiple books, 5 Voices, 5 Gears. He's authored in 2011 in the national best-selling market for Your Leadership Come Alive. His work is known as being powerful, sticky, scalable, and sustainable. He and his business partner released their new book, 100X Leader, in 2019. He is the executive chairman of Giant. Jeremie, welcome to the show.
And good to be here. Thank you.
You doing well today?
I'm doing great, man. Fired up. It's a nice day. It's, it's almost the weekend, all those things.
Well, good. You guys have a good Thanksgiving?
Great Thanksgiving. Yeah. I mean, the weather can't be better. This is like, are we in San Diego or what?
No, right? Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Oklahoma is very bipolar when it comes to weather, and we both live.
That's it. I've never heard that term, but that's actually a very good definition.
It is. I remember, I don't know how long you've lived here, but I remember in one day, okay, this was a few years ago, we had snow, 60-degree weather, tornado, earthquake, and flood watch. Like in one day. It was the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, it keeps us on our toes.
Right. Well, Jeremie, I wanted to bring you on to the podcast today because, I mean, like I mentioned in your bio, you are the co-founder of Giant Worldwide, which is a coaching program, leadership. You've coached many CEOs, many corporations, well-known, and you've met with a lot of successful people. You've met with a lot of companies and organizations and coached a lot of people through the process of personal growth, change, business change, adaptation, and everything like that. And one of the things that always interests me, especially from someone's perspective like yourself, what are some of the characteristics, the mindsets, the habits that makes a person more successful in their ability to adapt and to change?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's a great question. And I'll give you a couple of things that just popped in front of my mind. The best leaders I've ever been around, and I'm working with a few right now in some really interesting positions in the world. They're secure, they're confident, and they're humble. Mm. And it's an interesting insecurity breeds every type of drama. Insecurity produces arrogance instead of confidence. You can be overconfident and underconfident. You can be oversecure and undersecure, right? And all of that leads to pride. And I have this I have a talk on this concept of it's not about good versus evil in the world. It's about pride versus humility. And if you want to find all issues, it's pride. Ultimately, pride was the original sin. And if you want to get into that theologically, but the idea of insecurity and having someone move from insecure to secure is its own journey in self-awareness.
So as you're saying, security,
secure, confident, humble.
Confident, yeah. Confident. I was writing shorthand and then I couldn't read what I wrote. Confident, because what I wrote was comfortable instead of confident. Hold on here. Confident.
Yeah.
Okay. And then humble. And then you talked about, you can be under or over. And, maybe this is a new tool coming out here that's getting ready to be birthed, but it's kind of like the Goldilocks paradox is, it's too hot, it's too cold. You just find it just right. So how do you become self-aware in this scenario?
Yeah.
How do you figure out where you're at and accurately measure yourself?
So we have a tool called Know Yourself, Lead Yourself, and it's an interesting tool. But I like to mash up the tools. And at Giant, for those of you who don't know, we've taken concepts that are very complicated concepts, and we make them simple enough for a 13-year-old to get it. And it has to be simple, it has scalable and sustainable, but it needs to be visual. And then I like to take our tools. We have 70 of them, and I like to mash them up. So what I mean is take two tools, and they have a really interesting learning. So Know Yourself, Lead Yourself, which I'll explain, with the Support Challenge Matrix. So the idea is, if you want to grow as an individual, then you have to support yourself and challenge yourself. If you support with no challenge, you protect yourself. You're enabling yourself. It's like, you can have one more. You worked out 2 weeks ago. Like, that's support with no challenge.
Yeah.
The other side, challenge without support, is, you idiot. Why do you do this? You always, and you actually dominate yourself because you bring this challenge without appropriate support. So here's where I'm going with this is, if you've learned how to support yourself and challenge yourself, then you liberate yourself. You give grace and truth the chance to breathe in your life and a chance to be over you. So if grace and truth kind of are there, support and challenge, then you can know yourself more effectively. Mm. So I've been going through a journey of finding out my own tendencies and knowing what my tendencies are and what my patterns are. But I kind of am a detective on myself from a self-awareness side, but I do it out of liberation, not out of domination. So if I'm a dominator, I'm like, God, you idiot, you always do this. Stop it. Then that's going to be at calling myself out, not calling myself up. So for me, I'm learning to call myself up by going, so I found I have 29 tendencies. I overshare. I exaggerate. Historically, these are tendencies of mine. So I know what I do. I know when I do it and why I do it. And I know what it looks like, what my action is. And then I go to work on changing the action, changing the pattern. And when that takes place, then people want to be around me, or I'm more secure and I'm more confident and I'm more humble because I'm liberating myself, not dominating myself. Does that make sense?
It does. One of the things that I've talked about on this podcast is learning how to love yourself through the process of change. And as we're talking about this, that statement, while it's good to the ears, it's also very empty because there's no practical application. But what you just said is literally not only know yourself to lead yourself, but that's the crux of learning how to love yourself through the process of change by giving yourself the support and the challenge. You're not under supportive, over dominant, under dominant. And
yeah, so let's play with you. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So let's go. I know you're secure and confident and humble, so you're not afraid on your own podcast,
right,
to share what's a tendency that you have.
I am
just
very much addicted. Like, I think one of the things that I have a tendency to have anxiety.
Okay. So, and by the way, these tendencies are good and bad. Like, I have a tendency to find the best in people, and I can see what they can't see in themselves. That's a positive. On the negative side, but if I'm liberating myself, I'm not really worried about showing, or because I want to get better. So I don't see it as weakness. I see it as strength. So in your case, anxiety. When does it happen and why does it happen with you?
Great question. I'm still in discovery, but to my best of my knowledge, it more so happens towards the evening, or it happens when there's something exciting getting ready to take place in my life. And whether it's like a holiday or a trip or that. And then the other location would be is when I feel like I have a lot to do. And even while I'm being productive, I feel like it's never enough. And that causes this anxiety. Those are the three main.
How does it show up then in your action? Like what is the act? How does it show up, manifest itself?
My heart will race. I will feel nauseous and overwhelmed. And the only way to feel better is to go lay down in a dark room with a fan blowing on me and like deep breathing.
Yeah. What are the consequences of this? So we go from tendency to pattern to action. What are the consequences of this anxiety in your life? What's the consequence?
The consequence of it is it's completely disruptive. It takes me away from being present with my family. It takes me away from traveling sometimes. It takes me away from being able to show up. And it takes me away from just feeling good.
So then what's the reality, the end result? What reality is this in your life? This tendency manifests all the way through. How does it affect your reality, your everyday?
I would say that going back to what I just said is it doesn't allow me to be present. It takes things that I'm hopeful for to go do or excited for, and it makes it difficult for me to operate in. It doesn't happen all the time, but it shows up randomly. Sometimes it'll be very consistent. Sometimes I won't face it for a while. And it makes me feel sick.
So how many tendencies do you think that you have? Now that's just one. How many more do you think there are? 10, 15, 20?
Way more. Let's say 50 to 100. So, I'm sure I have tons of both known and unknown.
So people all the time go, man, isn't that heavy? Doesn't that feel pressure? I'm like, if I'm liberating myself, no, because I'm looking for it to go. Would you like this out of your life? Would you like anxiety out of your life?
Yeah, I would.
Right. So is that a bad thing? So you can ignore it and it's still in your life, right? Mm-hmm. You can act like it's not there and it's still there. So what happens then for anyone listening, it's like, no, you find these tendencies. Now, from my perspective, I go, well, that's really a partnership with the Holy Spirit, where the Holy Spirit is actually calling you up, not calling you out. But a lot of people's view of God is that he's like the golden smiter. Yeah. And he's like, boom, and look at that, and look at that. Or they're afraid to bring it up because they don't want judgment from a spouse or judgment from a friend or judgment because they're dominating themselves because they see it as weakness and weakness, right? So what I do is I actually run towards these things. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I overshare, don't I? Huh. And everyone's like, yep, you do. Yep. Sometimes you talk way too much. So it's the process of maturity. If you're secure and you're confident and you're humble, you'll allow things to work on you. You'll allow people to work on you. You'll allow yourself to work on you. And that's this whole person mindset. I mean, this is like the holistic view of like, hey, I'm going to become more and more is sanctified or what of these. It's not perfect, but I'm allowing the Holy Spirit, I'm allowing other things to help me see myself and what's it like to be on the other side of myself and see in a mirror and go, oh my goodness, I have broccoli in my teeth. How long has it been there? 25 years. Oh my goodness. And you get your own broccoli out of your own teeth. That is the process of self-awareness. And when people see you get your broccoli out of your teeth, your influence goes up because they see you working on yourself and you're improving, not because you're just, trying to be humanistic, but it's because you want to not have anything own you, rule you, have authority. Does that make sense?
No, totally. Something that you mentioned too in this is that I think plays a very large contributing factor of the stuckness of one in these patterns and habits is this view of God where he's the almighty smiter. And like I am an ordained minister and I struggle with that at times. And that's something that I even know that God's I'm not just going to smite you, but somewhere as a little kid, even though that was never preached to me, whether that's just through relationship of getting in trouble and not feeling good enough, somehow subconsciously became a part of my personal belief and then how I believed God viewed me, because it's how I viewed myself.
That's right.
So,
No, that's right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So you take that. Let's work on that for a minute. And so what I do and what I train people to do in Giant is to learn how to coach people. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor in any of those, but I'm an amateur. But I use tools to help liberate people by helping them see themselves. And then I create processes through these simple visual tools that work, and people start seeing things. So let's take anxiety. So if I was coaching you, we would take this anxiety. I'm like, hey, guess what? Good news, it's going to get better. Bad news, you're always going to have this tendency the rest of your life. And that's okay. So here's what I want everyone to understand. The tendencies never change. I have a tendency to exaggerate or overshare. I will always have that tendency in my personality to do that. But that doesn't mean I have to do it. So we take the tendency and go, it is what it is. Now let's move over to the pattern of when does it happen and why does it happen? And now I'm going to give you some actions. I'm going to give you some ideas and tips that could help you. And maybe they're like hacks and triggers that could keep you from that. And so all of a sudden now you start working on that tendency to start changing a pattern so that you have a different action. And if that takes place, your consequence may show up different. You may have different ramifications and maybe more positive. So are we cool if I do this on your podcast?
No, I'm
So we'll start with the deep one. And you brought it up, since you brought it up on identity. And if I'm talking to someone, I'm finding out where, from a faith aspect, how deep can I go? Where can I go? And so forth. And you already shared that. So I'm going to ask you a simple question.
Yeah.
Based on that, are you, give me one answer. First thing that popped in mind. Are you a sinner? Are you a saint? Or are you a son?
Sinner. I like that. I mean, I know the answer is the son. That's the right answer. But my internal dialogue says you're the sinner.
Yeah. So that's an identity issue, which we talked about already. But to go that journey from sinner to son, to go, well, so God right now, is he viewing you as a sinner?
No.
Is he viewing you as a saint? Is he viewing you as a son? So he has a different view of you than you have of yourself.
Right. And
so what would have to happen?
My view of myself on how I believe God views me. Yes.
So what would have to happen for you to have his view of you? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Not to make it an overly simplistic, cheesy answer, but just to know him more.
Okay. Yeah. And or to know how he sees you.
Right.
Know how he sees the world. Know how he views people. I did something for about 4 years. I read nothing but Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John over and over and over again. But I looked at it through a different lens. I would read it one time, God's view of Jesus, and I would skim all of the Gospels through that. And Jesus' view of God. And then I would circle back through Jesus' view of the world. Jesus' view of his disciples. And I'd go back through it. Jesus' view of the Pharisees and Jesus' view of the devil and the demons. And it like gave me this context. 4 years of that's all I did. And it was powerful because I'm like, oh my goodness, I see things differently. My wife's in Israel right now. She's on a tour. She got stuck over there with the virus. She's like the last flight in. And she's like, it's amazing. I have a tour guide. It's her and a friend with a tour guide. It was supposed to be like 400 people and it's just two of them. And she said it gave her an entirely new perspective because she's walking. This morning she drank from Jacob's well.
Wow.
And it gave her a whole new perspective of that story. So because she's experiencing it, what would it happen if you could actually see yourself from God's point of view? So the question would be this: God, would you show me how you see me? Would you let me see myself the way that you see me? And the freedom and liberation, if you can actually wait in that and sit in that, and all of a sudden you start calling yourself up because you realize, Evan, how much you've been calling yourself out. And by calling yourself out, it actually is directly tied to anxiety. But by calling yourself up, and getting into that place of freedom and support and challenge. And I mean, I'm a bloke. I'm a guy. I'm just a guy, just like everyone else, and listening in. And I'm like, God, screw up. In my past, it would be, God, why? And it's that sinner mentality, the smiter, and all that stuff. And now I've gotten to the point of like, oh yeah, I'm your son. I have kids. I have 3 kids. When I view my kids, am I waiting for them to screw up to point at them? No. What do I want from them? Oh, it's okay. I tell my kids all the time, hey, you guys are going to screw up a lot in life. A lot. I just want you to own it when you do. And then call yourself up. Don't call yourself out. And there's a big difference in that. So let me pause. I'm preaching now because I'm on the podcast here, but thoughts from it?
You brought your kids up, and I'm thinking about my kids and my parenting. And so not only this view of myself have I perpetuated in this is how God views me. And while I don't obviously follow my kids around looking for something that they're doing wrong, I'm very quick to correct. I'm very quick to, I don't want to say lay the hammer down, but I am very quick to correct. And I'm afraid that I'm pushing that on my kids.
Well, because it directly is tied to your view of the father potentially, right? And so it's all interrelated. And by the way, I'm not saying that, for those who are going to send me a text going, you don't believe that you're a sinner? I'm like, well, no, I don't. And I know I've sinned, and I know I'm sinner saved by grace is the Baptist answer to that, right? And I grew up Baptist, so I get that. But I've gotten to the point where I know God's view of me is like I dealt with that sin issue. So I don't manage sin. I actually yield as a son. And that identity shift was a massive deal because I realized God is in me. He's inhabiting me. Therefore, we have a dialogue, and I'm a son to him. And so I act like a son. And here's what I guess I'm going. I act like I belong. And when I act like I belong, then some of the sin stuff doesn't stick. It slides off of me. Doesn't mean I don't have to go shower sometimes because I walk, but it doesn't stick because I'm not focused on that.
Yeah.
I'm focused as a son. It'd be like your kids coming to you and going, oh, Dad, no, I did this. Oh, please don't. And you're like, what are you talking about? Climb up here. Come here. I love you. So,
yeah. No, that makes sense. One of the things that I've really sought after that kind of goes along with this in my life, like outside of, family and relationship with God and stuff like that, I guess a pillar or a staple of my life that I just so strongly desire is peace. And, peace isn't there when anxiety is.
That's right.
And I'm in the process of, there's circumstantial peace where everything's going good in your life, so it's easy to have peace. That's not real peace. Like real peace is in spite of circumstances. And so, I'm learning to live in real peace and working through that where I'm not struggling with anxiety. And, it's really cool because, I talk about faith, family, finances, friendship, fitness, and fun. And within Giant, we have something very similar called the Peace Index, which I don't verbatim have all those memorized yet. And so feel free to share them, but they're very similar to my 6 F's.
Yeah. So it's purpose. There's 5 P's: purpose, people, place, personal health, and provision. And it's an indicator. It's a snapshot in time of today. So how good do you feel about your purpose in life, your calling, what you're doing, 1 through 100, 100 being the highest. People would be the people in your life. How good do you feel about those in your inner circle, your family, your team, your top 20 relationships. How good do you feel about those 1 through 100? Place is where you live. It's the town, the house, the neighborhood, the town, your office, all those things. And then you get into personal health, which is a combination of holistically of physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, all combined. And then provision is how good do you feel about your earnings, what you're earning, your money that you're making, the provision that you need to live. So you can always have one. And what it is, it's a snapshot. Tomorrow, my number is going to be different than the next day and the next day and the next day. So over time, you might get where you smooth it out. That number becomes consistent. And then you have one circle that's off. That phrase, you're only as good as your weakest kid. You're only as good as the worst kid. And so that's a factor on people. Or maybe you've got an issue with a neighbor, some place, or you're frustrated with your earnings. So one of them is going to be low. And if you know what one's lowest, then you can work off of it. But one of them is going to be your driver. So purpose is the driver. If it's off, everything else is off. So like, which one drives you the most? Is it people? Is it purpose? And so those are things that it's just a snapshot in time. But what I want to do is I want to give you 2 other triggers to go back to the anxiety piece, because you go, you have peace, you have anxiety, you have peace, right? Those are counter to one another. And if you're wanting more peace, here's a couple of very practical. The identity piece that I shared with you, that's like a deep surgery. That's over time. It's going to take a while because you have ingrained habits to think about yourself and your view of God that actually probably needs to be reviewed. And by the way, when I say that about you, Evan, I mean every one of us needs to review that, especially if you've grown up in a heavily religious culture. The more religion, the more smiting happens in a lot of cases. It's really interesting. So getting to the place of freedom there and identity is one thing, but let's go really, really practical. I've got 2 ideas for you that could be life hacks. One is your daily charge in the morning, and one is at 5:30 called the examine. And these are things that I do that are game changers for me. And I'm not consistent by nature. That's not a tendency of mine to be very consistent because I'm a spontaneous guy. But I do these every morning. My morning routine is I do a call-up session. Usually it's when I'm getting up. If I've worked out or if I haven't, it doesn't matter. I still do it the same way. And I look in the mirror. It's not cheesy. I just call myself up. I'm like, all right, Jeremie, you're a liberator. You're a freedom fighter. And I give language to myself. It's almost like my own pep talk without it being cheesy. And I'm just like, remember what you're doing today. And I go through kind of my general bit. Then when I turn on the shower, I think through and I pray for people of peace. Like, who am I supposed to help today, God? Who do you want me to encourage? And I call myself up into the position of a son. You're a son of the Most High God. Act like it. Act like you belong. And it's not always the same language. It's really not even about what I say. It's the internally, like I'm evangelizing myself every single day. I'm calling myself up every single day. I'm reminding myself it's the daily charge. So I'm ready to go. Well, I do that. Well, that's what I used to do. And then I would get off and I would have like a week, like a tough week. And then so here's what I've done. I've added that in the morning, and then at 5:30 at night or in the evening, it's called the examine. And this is a Jesuit routine. And I've modified it. There's a deeper level than this, but this is the simple one. I do 3 things. I go back and through my day, and I make a list in my mind. Usually I'm driving, so I do this. I don't even write it down. I just do it. And I go, that was a great meeting with Evan. Thank you for that. Or that was a great time with Hunter today. Or thank you, God, for ... And there's 3, 4, 5 things. Sometimes when I'm finished, I'll text someone, thanks for the day. That was great, but I'm really grateful. So that gets me into grateful. Then I go back through my calendar and I go, all right, God, is there anything in me today that was off? Was there any, like, show me, was there anything? I was like, yeah, there is something with this friend. Why was I angry? And I start with me. So far as it depends on me, not looking at them, I look at me first. Is there anything that I was off, or is there anything they were off? And sometimes it's like, I need to have a conversation with them and, and kind of share, or I look and go, yeah, there's something there. It's insecurity. And I go, that's where a lot of my tendencies come up. I have a tendency log, 29. They come from this little examine. Like, yeah, you have a tendency to do that. Let's solve it. Then the last one is I look at the calendar for tomorrow and I pray for my day. I pray for tomorrow in the afternoon. So what happens then is I have been grateful. I've reviewed, search me, oh God, know my heart, see if there's any anxious thought in me. Let's deal with it today. And what that does is it puts to bed a lot of anxiety, because I found that my anxiety in the past would stack on each other. It would build up over 3, 4, or 5 days, which would then affect my quiet time or my morning routine. So now, because I have a front pillar and a back pillar, I have a front and a back, I'm like, I call myself up. So at 5:30, I'm feeling pretty good, because if there was any issues, I dealt with it that day. So my evening is a lot better. I'm more at peace with my wife. We're empty nesters, so it's just her and I. And I'm more at peace with her. Then my mornings are better, because I'm not bringing up yesterday's stuff in a new day. Because I believe God is present, future. Right. And it's short accounts. Then the past just doesn't stick as much anymore. So by having that, it's like a little trigger. It's like a life hack. Daily charge, afternoon, evening examine. If you do that, that could be something you might want to try on and try it a while and see if your anxiety starts to maybe go down a little bit, because it's not giving the chance to accumulate.
Wow.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I'm processing.
You're processing on your own podcast. We had no plan. How does this feel to you? Like when what I'm sharing, what kind of what feels alive and good? And is there any like cynicism that's creeping up of like, this is cheesy, that's not going to work?
Right. No cynicism. The naysayer in me is like, yeah, will you actually be consistent in doing this? Like, because I also I'll start well, but then the consistency part is also something that, So
I put it on my calendar at 5:30. I put examine. It's on my calendar every day. I don't hit it every day. I do it probably 4 to 5 days a week. I'll do it. But it's always on there. So then it pings, my alarm goes off. I'm like, oh yeah, examine time. And some days I don't, but most days I do. So that's something that you can do where it's a life hack. In the morning routine, I don't set anything. It's kind of like, I don't do it every day either. Probably 4 or 5 days a week where I do a daily charge or a call-up session. So those are just a couple of things that you don't have to be religious about it or rigorous about it. It's just simply it's a hack.
As we're talking about it, not only doing that, but then also, I really liked, it was in a video that you showed your tendency log, and I'm probably going to create one similar to yours.
We're about to add that to the Giant operating system, so you can actually have it in there. Yeah,
that's awesome. But the other thing too is just really allowing God to search my heart on how He sees me. Like all of this is cumulative. Like a good soup. I could pick one ingredient and go with it, but it won't be as good as just. And so when I say I'm soaking it all in, I'm contemplating, like I'm stewing, is what I'm doing, and seeing how this is a good process.
Are we okay on the time? Can I share one more story here? So here's a process that took me on my journey, and it was a metaphor that I created for myself. but it was a picture of God, because I will tell you, I similarly grew up with a lot of anxiety, and I've been dealing with it. I always say, and this is not original, I've heard this, I don't know who I heard it from, so whether it's anonymous, but worry is a prayer of disbelief. And it was the idea for me was picturing myself as a little kid in a grocery store. This is going to sound funny. This massive grocery store with God pushing the cart. And I'm like, got my hand on his like belt loop, or I'm walking, and I'm a little kid. And there's food everywhere. There's things everywhere. And another little kid is walking next to me. And I basically go, yeah, I'm just kind of really worried. Like, there's just, I don't know. And I'm like bemoaning while I've got a hand on the belt loop of God, and he can put anything in the basket at any time because it's all his. And it was like this anxiety. I don't know if that works at all for anyone, but what happened with me was like, I'm gossiping about my dad in front of him, where if my child did that, if my kid was in a store with me and I've got money, I've got food, what do you need in the basket? And my son looks to another son and goes, yeah, I just don't think we're going to make it. Or I just don't know if ... And spreading worry, I would have stopped and go, son, hey, look at me. What are you talking about? That makes no sense. Like, what's happening? But it's that relationship. It's like the relationship between God and the little boy in this narrative, in this story. Well, the son doesn't know who he is. And like, if I know that I'm a son of the Most High God, and I walk in that and step into it and act like I belong, then I can step boldly with confidence because I have superpowers.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is like, here's what I'd say to anyone listening to this. If you struggle with the same thing that I struggle with Evan on, it's like, no. Stepping into our superpowers means that we get activated. If we're activated sons versus downcast sinners, that's not the gospel. Downcast sinners doesn't work. You want to read Romans? You want to read Hebrews? You want to read any of the freedom and the liberation? And the other little story in this would be, look at the difference between the disciples in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John versus Acts 3, Acts 2, Acts 3, Acts 4. What happened to them? They were cowering and afraid because they didn't want to be found out that they were with Jesus. And then a few chapters later, they're like freedom fighters. They're the Avengers. And you know what happened is Jesus told them, guys, it's going to be great for you that I leave, because when I leave, I'm coming inside of you. And when I come inside of you, we're going to do way more than I could ever do when I was with you. Well, what we see in Acts is basically the way it's meant to be. But over time, the cares of the world, the delight in riches, the desires for other things enter in, choke the truth, and prove men unfruitful, men and women unfruitful, and unfruitfulness in that. So we have to then fight. The way we fight to get activated is we have to remember who we are. I'm a son of the Most High God. Don't mess with me. Like, I've got superpowers. I'm activated. I'm free. And that type of living is so much more fun than being under this blanket of worry and fear and sin. That's all been dealt with.
Yeah.
Sin's been dealt with. I'm preaching.
No, you're fine. Like, well, and I think too is just, I had an aha moment right now. I think I just had my mind blow. Okay. Because what it comes down to is not just, hey, these things happen and my identity is rocked, but it comes down to a sin issue. Like it's identifying myself as unworthy and as a sinner. And, the wages of sin is death, and anxiety feels like you're dying. And when you view yourself as that, as a sinner, then the spirit of sin, that crippling effect, is easier to take root. And so, at a high level, at an overview, when I first mentioned this, it was, performance-based and not just in work, but, excitement about things coming up, and then, viewing myself. But then as we kept going deeper and deeper and deeper, it just became more related to sin. And I'm talking out loud, discovering things right now. So if I sound like I'm rambling, it's because I am.
Well, think about this. The enemy's job is to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
Well, what would he want to put on you? I want you to stay a sinner. I want you to keep thinking, because I don't want you to activate to be a son. Because when you activate to be a son, you're a true enemy. But when you're a sinner in his mind and you just keep wallowing in that, then he has won. And by the way, guess who's the most anxious person in the entire cosmos? Satan.
Yeah.
He lives in anxiety.
Oh,
he has to.
Never thought about.
He has to know.
I've never thought about that. That is so smart. Like, it's true. It's true. He knows he loses horribly. I've never had that thought.
So we step into, oh my goodness, throw this cloak of doubt and sin and shame and all that stuff over, because it's already been dealt with. And then you begin to walk in it. And then those little claws that he has to try to pull you back in it, it's just like, yeah. And it's like, nope. It slips off. So you then aren't controlled by those things, and you become fully alive, fully activated, fully free. And then there's peace of mind, and the peace of mind comes in your identity. It starts in your identity. I'm a son of the Most High God. Will my Father take care of me? Of course he will. Now, there's other things. Am I trying to do something to prove myself? So I'm overextended financially because I bought a Porsche and because I'm trying to show that I'm something I'm not. Well, that's insecurity. Insecurity create an appearance of confidence, which is overconfidence, which is all pride-based. And your anxiety is tied because you have a Porsche in your driveway. I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying that's an example of like, so.
Okay. This is so funny, Jeremie. This week or over the weekend.
You bought a Porsche.
No. No. I had a dream that I bought a Tesla. Because I want a Tesla. I really do. But in the dream, I had so much anxiety because it was so expensive and we could barely make the payments on it. Like, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And so when I woke up, I told my wife, oh, that's just a funny dream. Hear me now, whoever's listening. The analogy you just gave was pre-God ordained, to the point that God already gave me a dream about exactly what you said. I'm just saying.
There you go. So the secure and confident and humble person has a secure relationship with their Father. They're confident in who they are. They walk in humility because they're not trying to prove themselves. And they say it like this: I have nothing to prove. I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to hide. Mm-hmm. When you have nothing to prove, nothing to lose, and nothing to hide, you're at peace. It's peace. Peace that surpasses all understanding, because I know who I am. Jesus was like, they're like, hey, where are we going to stay tonight? He's like, hey, I have no clue. My wife's been walking around the Sea of Galilee this week. And she's like, it is unbelievable. I'm like, when he says he doesn't know where he's living tonight. Yeah, we'll sleep somewhere. I don't know. Talk about a secure, confident, and humble. Jesus is the epitome of secure, the epitome of confident, and the epitome of humility, because humility is power. I only do what the Father tells me to do. Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. He'll lift you up in due time. So secure and confident and humble people, well, that's who Jesus was. It's a much better way to live, but it's all rooted in knowing who you are.
It's awesome. I am so looking forward to a book that you're going to write on spiritual stuff outside of just leadership stuff, because dude, you got gold in you, man. Oh, that's so good. Let me ask you this. When you think of peace for yourself, what brings you peace? Would you say it's those three things: learning how to be confident, secure and humble?
Confident. Yeah, I mean, it ultimately is. It's this, like the battle is real. I have I have different kind of battles, different tendencies, and but it's the process and the journey. It's a daily thing, right? So what brings me peace is intimacy with the Lord first, with my wife, and with my business partners. I've found I'm at the most peace when I say intimacy, I don't mean that in a weird way. I mean like intimacy, like I'm connected.
Yeah.
I feel known, and I feel connected, and I feel in right relationship with God, my wife, and my business partners. And when that takes place, there's a lot of peace. And when I'm at peace, I'm really good. When I'm not at peace, man, I can create drama. So that's how I view it.
Gotcha. Well, Jeremie, where can people find more out about you?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. If you wanted to go take a look at what we do, just go to giantworldwide.com. It's pretty simple. We certify people, and we become a partner with them and help them coach people and consult people. And we try to make it a very affordable and a very simple process. And we're constantly getting better. We use technology. It's a lot of neat things. If you want to look at my site, it's jeremiekubicek.com. It's hard to spell, JeremieKubiceck. I need it. My parents didn't help me out on the URL. JeremieKubicek.com. And that gives you some background as far as me as a speaker, some of my content, and so forth. And I'm constantly writing and creating and working on a slew of things right now. But your words to me, Evan, were very profound. And there's some things I'm working on that's where I'm heading in that regard.
Well, good, man, because it's there. So, well, Jeremie, thank you so much for coming on today. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, brother.
Take care.